I told myself it would be a harmless experiment, just a little fun, a social test, a crossover episode nobody asked for. I would let a lifelong Windows user choose my next Linux distribution, install it on my main machine, and live with it for a week. No veto power, no backpedaling. Whatever they picked, I'd run it. That was the deal. What I didn't realize was that I was about to willingly hand over years of carefully tuned workflows, muscle memory, Dart files, window manager tweaks, and system stability to someone whose idea of power user meant knowing how to change the desktop wallpaper without Googling it. This is the story of how chaos ensued. For context, I've been using Linux for years. I've hopped distros like some people hop smartphones. I've daily driven Arch, flirted with Fedora, respected Debian, and customized my setup so deeply that even I sometimes forget how it originally looked. My system boots fast. My tiling window manager is surgically configured. My keyboard shortcuts are embedded in my nervous system, and I know exactly where every config file lives. I don't just use Linux, I inhabit it. So when I told my Windows-using friend to choose my next distro, they assumed it was like picking a theme in Windows. How different can they be? They said. I just smiled. The rules were simple. They could research for one day. They could ask me clarifying questions about what I use my computer for. But I couldn't influence their decision beyond factual answers. They couldn't ask other Linux users for advice. No Reddit polls, no Discord servers, just them, a browser, and the internet. At the end of the day, they'd send me the name of the distro, and I would wipe my system and install it. The first question they asked was what I use my computer for. I said development, scripting, some light gaming, video editing, writing, browsing, and tinkering. They nodded as if they understood, which they absolutely did not. Then they asked if I needed the hacker one. I clarified that I didn't need a penetration testing distro, and that using one as a daily driver would be like commuting in a tank. They said, okay, not the hacker one. I felt a small wave of relief. The next question was whether I cared about visuals. I hesitated. On Linux, visuals are everything and nothing at the same time. You can make almost any desktop environment look like almost anything. But I answered honestly, yes, I care about aesthetics. I like a clean, minimal interface. I don't want unnecessary animations or clutter. I like efficiency. They wrote that down like it was a corporate requirement. The day passed, I received memes. I received screenshots. I received one message that said, "Why are there so many of these?" I explained gently that Linux distributions are like flavors built around the same kernel, but with different philosophies. Package managers, release cycles, and desktop environments. They replied with, "So it's like Android skins." I paused, sighed, and said, "Sure." That evening, the message arrived. Just one line. I choose Arch Linux. I stared at the screen. For a moment, I thought this was a joke. I asked if they were serious. They said yes, because everyone online says it's for experts. And you said you've been using Linux for years, so this should be perfect. This was the first sign of chaos. Arch wasn't the problem. I've used Arch before. The problem was that their understanding of why Arch is chosen had nothing to do with stability, workflow, or maintenance overhead. It was chosen because it sounded elite. I wiped my drive. The Arch installation process is famously manual. There's no friendly graphical installer unless you use unofficial tools. You partition disks yourself, you mount them, you bootstrap the system, you generate fstab, you croot, you install a bootloader. It's surgical. It's beautiful if you're in the mood. I wasn't entirely in the mood, but rules are rules. I installed it clean, methodically, like returning to an old ritual. Part of me felt nostalgic. Part of me felt dread. Once the base system was up, the real decisions began. Desktop environment, display server, audio system, package helpers. I couldn't ask them now. The distro was chosen, but the flavor was up to me. I decided to keep it simple and go with GNOME for speed, even though I usually prefer a tiling window manager. I thought maybe I'd give myself a break from over-customization. That decision would come back to haunt me. The first boot into the new system was clean. Minimal, almost sterile. No bloat, no extra packages, just a raw canvas. I began installing my usual tools: Git, NeoVim, Docker, Node, Python, a browser, media codecs. That's when the rolling release reality kicked in. Updates were massive. Packages were bleeding edge. Some dependencies had changed since the last time I'd run Arch as a daily driver. One package conflicted with another. I had to read through Pacman output carefully, making choices about replacements and conflicts. Meanwhile, my Windows friend kept messaging. Is it done? Is it cool? Does it look hacker? I sent them a screenshot of the blank GNOME desktop. They replied, "That's it." I explained that the power of Arch is control, not flashy defaults. They suggested I install a theme. Chaos level rising. By day 2, I had a working system, but it didn't feel like mine. GNOME's workflow clashed with my muscle memory. I kept trying to use keyboard shortcuts that didn't exist. I missed my tiling window manager's precise window placement. I tried to recreate parts of my old setup, but each change pulled me deeper into configuration territory. Extensions, tweaks, custom key bindings. I told myself to stop. The experiment wasn't about rebuilding my old system. It was about living with what was chosen. Then came the first real crack. A system update introduced a minor regression in a graphics driver. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to cause flickering in one of my applications. On a fixed-release distro, I would have ignored updates for a bit. On Arch, updates are constant. You either keep up or risk dependency. Hell, I dove into forums, read through bug reports, rolled back a package temporarily. My Windows friend asked why it was breaking so much. I explained that it wasn't breaking, it was evolving. They said that sounded like a relationship excuse. By midweek, I realized something important. The chaos wasn't just technical, it was psychological. Knowing that I hadn't chosen this setup made every inconvenience feel heavier. If I had picked Arch myself, I'd own the friction. But because someone else chose it based on vibes and internet comments, every small hiccup felt like a cosmic prank. Still, there were upsides. The system was blazing fast. Boot times were short. Package availability was incredible. The Arch user repository felt like a treasure chest. I installed niche tools with a single command. I compiled something from source, just because I could. There was a strange empowerment in running such a lean, bleeding-edge system again. My Windows friend loved hearing about compiling things. See, hacker vibes, they said. Then came the second wave of chaos. I decided to game. Linux gaming has improved massively over the years. Proton, Wine, Vulkan, it's all come a long way. On some distros, it's relatively plug to play. On Arch, it's also very possible, but you have to know what you're doing. Graphics drivers must match. 32-bit libraries must be enabled. Vulkan packages must be installed properly. I installed Steam, configured Proton, and launched a game. It worked, then it didn't. A patch dropped. Something changed. I had to tweak launch options, edit configs, install additional libraries. My Windows friend asked, would this just work on Windows? I stared into the distance. Yes, probably. But that wasn't the point. The point was control, freedom, transparency. They responded with, freedom to fix your own problems. I couldn't argue. As the days went on, the chaos became less about crashes and more about friction. Small, constant friction. An extension breaking after an update, a theme needing adjustment, a package requiring manual intervention. None of it was catastrophic. All of it was cumulative. I began to understand why some people prefer stable, fixed-release distributions for daily work. Predictability has value, and yet there were moments of pure joy. Installing the latest version of a development tool hours after release, tweaking system files without artificial barriers, understanding exactly what was running on my machine because I had installed every part of it. Arch forces you to confront your system. There's no hiding behind layers of abstraction. By the final day of the week, something unexpected happened. The chaos had shaped me. I was more attentive to updates, more aware of dependencies, more intentional with configurations. I had re-earned a kind of Linux literacy that comfort can dull. My Windows friend asked if I was switching back. I hesitated. The truth was complicated. Arch, chosen for the wrong reasons, had still delivered a powerful experience. The chaos wasn't just destruction, it was friction revealing habits, assumptions, and trade-offs. Letting a Windows user choose my distro exposed how much of Linux culture is about philosophy as much as functionality. Rolling release versus stable, minimal versus curated, control versus convenience. In the end, I did switch back to my previous setup, not because Arch failed, but because my workflow demanded a different balance. But I didn't revert unchanged. I kept some habits I had developed. I simplified parts of my configuration. I updated more consciously. I appreciated stability more deeply because I had lived on the edge again. When I told my Windows friend I was switching back, they said, "So I broke you?" I laughed. No, they didn't break me. They reminded me. Linux isn't just about picking the best distro, it's about understanding what you value: stability or novelty, automation or manual control, comfort or challenge. Would I do it again? Maybe, but next time, I might let them choose something completely different. Maybe a beginner-friendly distro, maybe something obscure. Because the real chaos wasn't the technical issues, it was surrendering control. And in that surrender, I learned something about why I used Linux in the first place. It's not just about avoiding Windows, it's about choice. And sometimes, the most enlightening choice is the one you don't make yourself.